Hello, good morning. Welcome to this week's Learn with Lorna, episode number 230, if you can believe that. Episode number 230, where we are looking at arts and drama in Caithness. My name is Lorna Steele-McGinn. I'm the Community Engagement Officer with the Highland Archive Service. We have 4 archive centres in the Highlands of Scotland, in Inverness, Fort William, Portree and in Wick. And as you can guess, a lot of the stories from today's will be drawn from our archives in Wick. This series is brought to you by High Life Highland at no cost to the viewer. High Life Highland is a charity registered in Scotland and there is no payment or subscription required to take part in this series of talks. But if you're able to donate towards our work, then we're really grateful for that. So welcome to episode number 230, where, as I say, we're looking at the subject of arts and particularly drama in Caithness. So a big thank you, as always, when I'm doing a Caithness focused episode, to my colleagues at Nuclear and Caithness Archives, who have been amazing in supplying me with some of these stories. I found it really interesting going through this episode just to see how much the people of Caithness have enjoyed and valued and treasured theatre over the years, over the centuries, and how much they continue to do so, both attending performances and putting them on. So hopefully that'll come across as we go through this episode. Have a listen to this extract from the John O'Groat Journal of Friday the 22nd of July 1842. Theatre. Mr. Brayer, late of Edinburgh and Glasgow theatres, has arrived here with a select company and has given great satisfaction to all those who have witnessed his acting, and also that of his talented family. His performance of Macbeth was a masterpiece. The soliloquy, "Is this a dagger which I see before me?" was delivered with judgment and energy and drew down reiterated plaudits. He has since personated Richard III and Rocric Dhu in The Lady of the Lake, in both of which parts he was equally successful. In comic characters too, Mr. Brayer has elicited great applause. We would in particular mention Benjamin Bowbell in the farce The Wreck of the Polly, during the performance of which the house was in a perfect scream of laughter. Miss Brayer is a young lady of great talent, and her performance of Macduff, rather a strange character by the way, was deserving of great praise, as also was Lady Macbeth of Mrs. Brayer. Mr. Sutherland is an actor of great merit. Nothing comes amiss to him. He sang a comic song on Monday last, which at once stamped him as a future favourite with the Wick theatre-going folks. The laughter and the applause with which he was greeted was positively deafening. There is a Mr. Fitzjohn in the corps dramatique who is a useful member of it. We must not omit to notice that Mr. Brayer has an excellent violin player with him who handles the bow in a very scientific manner. The selection of the music played between the acts has been well chosen. It is principally from Strauss and Musard, and the most favourite operas with a sprinkling of Scottish airs. Mr. Warden, Junior, of this town, is also engaged in the orchestral department. We perceive by the advertisement in our first page that Mr. Brayer is to sustain the part of William Tell and his daughter that of Albert tonight. From what we have already seen of him, we anticipate a rich treat. This celebrated play of Sheridan Knowles abounding in passages of the most sublime and exalted character. So, 1842, that review, and you just get a feeling of the joy that it's bringing to the community attending these travelling exhibitions of drama. Incidentally, the following week's review of that William Tell performance that's mentioned there is equally glowing. Miss Brayer comes in for praise because of her versatility, and it's noted that the role of the Dominie in Walter Scott's Guy Mannering had never been played better either on the Edinburgh or the London boards. So there, that's some praise. And that article concludes that a fashionable night will be put on the following week by the express desire of several families in Wick and the neighbourhood, as well as strangers at present sojourning here. We also found this article within the paper. Theatre, Wick, under the management of Mr. Brayer. Mr. B, with sentiments of respect and gratitude, offers his acknowledgments to the ladies, gentlemen and public of Wick, Pulteney Town and vicinity for the support conferred on the theatre since its opening. All who have witnessed the histrionic abilities of his corps dramatique have never failed to applaud them with smiles of approbation. Several of the most popular pieces of the day are in preparation and will be brought forward in rapid succession, selected from the pens of celebrated authors, blending beauty and simplicity with instruction and delight, devoid of all low bombast and buffoonery attractions, which tend rather to bring the stage into contempt, instead of supporting it as a great and noble school of taste, literature and high intellectual enjoyment. The manager honourably pledges himself that no opportunity shall be omitted wherein attention and respectability, joined to professional knowledge and long experience, can be exerted to secure him a continuance of the support of the patrons of the theatre and the public generally. So interesting there, that awareness of the kind of difference between the theatre and the music hall, the risk, as they have perceived it, of it falling into low bombast and buffoonery, but arguing that it's a very intellectual pursuit and that it should be treated as such. So we know that the people of Caithness enjoyed going to the theatre for hundreds of years. I found loads of different reviews when I was looking into this, some for eminently successful performances by the company of Mr. Forrest Knowles of Dundee's Opera House in 1871, which said that the crowded audiences which assemble each evening in the Temperance Hall testify to the appreciation in which they are held by all lovers of drama in Wick. But what about putting plays on? Well, again, there's a really long history of that, with multiple amateur companies and dramatic organisations across the county over the years. And again, if I have a look through the newspapers, we can bring up some references to various groups. So, for instance, in the Northern Chronicle of October 1886, we find this entry: Thurso Dramatic Entertainments. The newly formed Thurso Dramatic Club gave performances to fairly large audiences in the Artillery Drill Hall on Thursday and Friday evenings. The piece chosen for the performance was entitled Engaging a Tragedian, and it was gone through in a creditable, if somewhat amateurish style. It may be mentioned in connection with Thursday evening's entertainment as illustrative of the Northern journalistic enterprise that a report of the proceedings, having cheers and applause appropriately inserted, was in circulation about an hour before this meeting assembled. I love the fact that they're reviewing the performance, but they're not missing the opportunity to praise their own industry a little bit. There are also references to the Thurso Dramatic Society. An article in the John O'Groat Journal of the 5th of June 1925 opens with this: How the Players Performed, special report by our Thurso correspondent. Without doubt, it required a measure of courage on the part of the members of the Thurso Amateur Dramatic Society to stage the three-act comedy Tilly of Bloomsbury in the Picture House on Friday evening, as in doing so they made their first public appearance as a society. A first night is ever an ordeal, even to experienced professional exponents of the histrionic art, and it says much for the members of the cast that they rose superior to all difficulties and won the praise of a large audience by presenting the play in a manner that compares favourably with the standard attained by many of the professional companies that have visited this town from time to time. So we can see Amateur Dramatic Society setting up that one in Thurso. I'm laughing because I'm seeing your message, Linda, coming in that you've had drama of your own, which is why you're able to be here live today. So I'm sorry you've had drama, but I'm glad you're here with us. That article I was just reading there about the Thurso Amateur Dramatic Society is followed by a comment on every actor and a note that the orchestral selections of splendid quality were rendered by the Thurso Orchestra. But I want to move on for the remainder of this episode to organisations which are still in existence and going strong today in Caithness. The Thurso Players came into being in the mid-1900s, following in the footsteps of those other Thurso clubs and groups that I've mentioned. And after performing in various different venues, in 1960 they were gifted part of the old Thurso watermill by Robin Sinclair, Lord Thurso, and the Sinclair Family Trust. And a substantial amount of renovation was required. Eventually the Mill Theatre, however, would go on to become the home of Thurso Players, which it has remained so ever since. where they've put on both one-act plays and full-length plays, as well as musicals. And in addition, the group put on a popular pantomime in Thurso High School every year. We don't have many records for Thurso players, but we do have some. We have some photographs of productions, we have a book about the players' history published in 2001, and we have some programmes. And people always love looking at programmes. We have a lot for Eden Court Theatre in the Archive Centre in Inverness, and people love looking through them because they bring back memories of attending performances, of the people involved, particularly if there's an amateur element to it. It brings back memories of people in the community. And among the ones we have in our collections for Thurso players are A Wee Home from Home, the programme for a 1988 performance of mime, dance and drama, 1990's The Gondoliers, 1995's Burke and Hare the musical, and 1997's The Tempest. And we also hold some from more recent years, such as 2014's Cinderella, starring Rosie Fiddler, Glenn Jackson, Andrew Crawford and Donna Swanson. If we move across to Wick, I want to focus now on a group for whom we have a substantial collection of records, the Wick Players, who we've worked very closely with over the years in our Nuclear and Caithness archive. The records of Wick Players, which date from 1934 to 2024, were recently deposited with us. And the collection includes administrative records, financial records, correspondence, programmes, files of films of different productions, scripts, set designs, poetry, song lyrics, photographs, newsletters, magazines, all sorts of different things. And it's a great collection which my colleague Val has just recently finished cataloguing. So we're going to look at their story next. Originally called The Players until the 1950s, the group was formed in 1932 when Mr. Kennedy Stewart, who was the newly appointed Caithness County Librarian, called a meeting to address what he felt was a lack of culture in the area. I'm not giving any opinion to whether he was right or not. He felt that there was a need for this high art in the area. In December 1933, their first show was staged in the Breadalbane Hall. And when I read Val's notes about the programme for that first show, I read it and I thought, good grief, that is very, very ambitious. In their first performance, they were including 3 one-act plays, solos and poems. And then I read Val's next sentence, which I'm going to read out to you. The first show proved to be a steep learning curve. Marley Robertson, an original player, said of the show, "We were overloaded, overambitious and overconfident. The curtain fell on the last item at about 1 o'clock and the audience had gone home. It was a resounding failure and a shambles, and it left us in debt." But the players were not to be put off, and the following June they put on a very challenging play, The Ghost Train, again in Breadalbane Hall. The star of the show was the train, devised and timed to a second by the maths and science departments of Wick High School, and the play was a huge success. The Ghost Train, incidentally, was written by Arnold Ridley, who's probably now best known for playing Godfrey in Dad's Army. The group were aiming to build on that triumph of that second play, which had been such a success, and they were building towards their next performance when disaster struck, because the Breadalbane Hall was destroyed by fire. And Val had in her notes to me that it was a proper theatre before it was destroyed. It had footlights, curtains and a stage and dressing rooms and audience seating, and so its destruction was a huge loss to this group, but also to the town in general and to visiting performers of all sorts of genres and types. And the Wick Players moved then to the only other possible venue, the Rifle Hall. But a lot of work had to go in to making the building suitable. And then, of course, during the war years, both the Rifle Hall and all other similar spaces were taken over for the war effort. And the war did cast a shadow, and it took a while for the group to kind of get back going again. And their first performance after the war, or their first several productions, were Pride and Prejudice and So to Bed. And from the 1950s onwards, the Wick Players, along with the Thurso Players and teams from Ray and John O'Groats, took part in the drama festivals that were organised by the Scottish Community Drama Association. They competed right up through to the district heats and then to the Highland Divisional Festival and into the Scottish final. And Val notes that the group's first major achievement on the national stage was their 1952 production of Campbell of Kilmore, and they've visited the Scottish final in every subsequent decade, which is amazing. I mentioned that one of the Thurso players' great successes is their annual pantomime, and Wick players too have enjoyed great success with panto. In 1950 they staged Cinderella to raise money for a new heating system for the Wick Bridge Street Church, and members of Wick players were joined by the Men's Guild of the church. After performing Puss in Boots the following year, there were discussions about forming a Wick Pantomime Society, but in the end it was agreed to absorb that into the Wick players, now with that name they were now known as the Wick players, and perform pantos on alternate years rather than setting up a separate organisation. But just as I was talking about with Thurso, with the need for a building and then the complications and the issues that come with renovating that building and finding places to store props and so on, the exact same problem was happening in Wick. Finding premises to store props and equipment as well as somewhere to rehearse became a priority as more and more time went on. And after a few years, a property in Breadalbane Crescent became available. After a few years in a property in Breadalbane Crescent, the players moved to Harbour Terrace. And from 1963, the Wick players performed in the newly refurbished Academy School, what we now know as the Assembly Rooms. And again, that's a building that's seen lots of changes and improvements and developments over the years, depending on its different uses. In 1980, the Wick players took on something very personal and relevant to the local area. I'll share it in Val's words. In 1980, Wick players faced a real challenge with By the Cran. This was a musical play written by local historian Ian Sutherland, dramatised by Ian Matheson. It was a documentary tale of Wick's industry. It told the story of the planning and development of Pulteneytown, the construction of Wick Harbour, the development of the herring fishing, its decline, and the disaster of that fateful day when so many men were lost, and the tragedy it was to the Wick community. All of this was told through song and dialogue by the main characters, Johnny and Jenny Horn, and a large cast. By the Cran was staged for 2 evenings in October 1980 to full houses in Wick Assembly Rooms, before travelling to Ayr for the SCDA's Festival of New Drama, which took place in November. And of course I've spoken repeatedly through this series about the importance of the herring trade to Wick and the prosperity that it brings, but also the devastation when ships are lost. You may also remember that some time ago I did a Lorna on Ian Sutherland, who wrote that play and whose collection we hold at Nucleus. There were some real highs for the Wick players in the 1990s. I'll return to Val's words rather than trying to tell you myself. In 1996, Wick players entered SCDA's 3-act play festival with Don't Dress for Dinner. Directed by Donald Farmer, the club performed this play at the Assembly Rooms, at which the adjudicator of the festival was present. A total of 96 out of 100 marks were awarded for the performance. This was the highest mark ever given by an adjudicator at the time and was a huge achievement for Wick players. Greater achievements were to come, however. In June 1998, Wick players' production of Lone Star by American playwright James McClure won the British Final Festival of One-Act Plays, held that year in Falkirk. In the run-up, the players won at Caithness, Highland and Scottish level in the Scottish Community Drama Association's annual competitions. Amazing to go from that local level and then up and up and up, and each time you're building to that winning the British final. That play is set in Texas in the 1970s and features Vietnam veteran Roy, his brother Ray, and their friend Caithness. Roy reminisces about the good old days, the fights, the drinking, the women, and his prized Thunderbird convertible. But as events unfold, it emerges that Ray has been looking after Roy's wife while he was away, and his car has been wrapped around a tree in the neighbourhood. The adjudicator, Russell Boyce, praised the very, very high standard of acting from the 3-man cast and described Kevin Farmer as a tour de force in his role as Vietnam veteran Roy and Andrew Craigie perfect timing as his brother Ray. Their friend was played by Benny Douglas, and he went on to say, "The text was delivered as if it was being said for the first time, while the direction was as near perfection as possible. This was a performance of quality." From the Caithness Courier of the 1st of July 1998, Wick players created history at the weekend by becoming the first team from the Highlands to win the British one-act play championships. The historic win delighted director Donald Farmer, who has been involved with the Wick players since 1961. "It's just an experience that I'll never forget," he said. Upon the team's return to Wick following the festival, a presentation was held in Wick Town Hall. 2 paintings, one depicting the cast in action and one of the play's set, was commissioned to mark what was a momentous occasion for the local community. These paintings now hang in the Mowat Room in the Wick Assembly Rooms. Just 3 years later, Wick players won the British finals again, this time with A Bench at the Edge by Luigi Giannuzzi at the Lyric Theatre in Belfast in June 2001. The play is a gripping tale of 2 men on the brink of the abyss. Over 1,000 plays from England, Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales were narrowed down to 4, one from each nation, for the final. The 2 principals were once again Kevin Farmer and Andrew Craigie, with Robbie Anderson and Derek Douglas in supporting roles. Again, Donald Farmer was in the director's chair. Billy Burns was the adjudicator, and he announced his decision by saying, "One team seemed to create magic, seemed to find the truth, and gave me a brilliant time in the theatre, and I can sum it up in one word: Scotland." And so the Howard de Walden Trophy came home to Wick for the 2nd time. And following the win, the playwright Luigi Giannuzzi wrote to Donald Farmer, the director, saying, "I am jumping up and down and I cannot contain myself. It's unbelievable." Wick players have appeared in 3 British finals and multiple Scottish finals, and Wick junior players have also enjoyed national success, including making the 2018 National Youth Final and in 2024 winning the Highland Divisional Youth Final. In 2004, the Wick Players Club Rooms were purchased, now known as the Murray Street Drama Centre, and comprising multiple rehearsal halls, facilities, and they're always, of course, keen for people to join them. But before I finish this episode, I want to touch on that element of joining in and what that means to people. As I said right at the beginning, I was so struck by just the level of joy that comes across in this subject. I've been part of amateur dramatic societies. They are fun and they do feel part of a community, and you can see all the way through this that attending the theatre and taking part in it makes a big difference to people. And so I wanted to finish with something that my colleague Jen sent me. Jen at Nucleus sent me over some notes about the MAD Society, the Music, Arts, Drama and Dance, which was a project run by Anne and Bob Hutchison, who were both teachers at Wick High School, and which welcomed many Wick pupils to out-of-school sessions and performances. And at Nucleus we hold some photographs, some posters, programmes, cast lists and some videos of productions, although again not many. And Jen, who went to the group when she was at school, sent this to me. As a former member, it was a lovely walk down memory lane, looking through our records of the society for things to use in this episode of Learn with Lorna. Taking part in music, art, drama and dance gave me so many friends and so many fun experiences, and helped me learn how to talk to anyone, a very useful skill that I use daily in my job now. Everyone was split into groups, and you would do a bit of singing, a bit of acting, a bit of dance, etc. And then you would rotate what you were doing, so everyone did a bit of everything. Games would also be played with everyone taking a part, Wink Murder especially popular. We don't hold very much about this group, but if anyone has anything they would like to add to it, I would love to hear from them. And the same goes for all of these societies and others. If you have material that we can add to our collections, if you're part of or know of a dramatic society in John O'Groats or Ray or somewhere else that we don't have records for, then please consider depositing them with us, because it enables us to tell a much fuller story of the hobbies, the societies, the businesses that are and have been across the Highlands. So please do get in touch with us. And likewise, I'm sure they will not mind me saying this. If you're in Caithness and you now want to join a drama group or want to find out more about them, please do get in touch with Wick Players, Thurso Players, or any other groups that you come across. I'm sure they would love to welcome you. So thank you especially to my colleagues in Nucleus for all the stories that they sent over and for their memories as well. Next week I'll be going back to a favourite collection of mine, doing some more stories from the Fraser Tytler collection. But in the meantime, a reminder that this series is brought to you by High Life Highland at no cost to the viewer, that High Life Highland is a charity registered in Scotland and there's no payment or subscription required to take part in this series. But if you're able to donate towards our work and enable us to keep doing all the different things that we do, then we're very grateful for that. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for your comments that always make me smile. Thank you.